meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order. Dr. Albright, may I have a roll call, please?
Peggy Mola Aragon,
Here.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Here.
Barbara Peterson,
Here.
Latavia Romero,
Here.
Josefina Dominguez,
Here.
Courtney Jackson,
Here.
and Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Here. Special Board of Education meetings will be hybrid meetings with community members having a choice to attend in person at the John Milne Community Boardroom or virtually at www.aps.edu. Presenters will attend virtually. You may participate by attending the meeting in person, watching the live stream of upcoming meetings by clicking on the live meeting stream button on the main board page at www.aps.edu. Emailing input, comments, and questions to board members at board.ed@aps.edu or calling at 505-880-3729. So our first item for consideration and action is, and this is a long one, adoption of the December 19th, 2022 Special Board of Education meeting agenda and approval of the May 18th, June 1st, July 20th, 22, September 21st, October 5th, October 9th, 19th, November 2nd, November 16th, and December 7th of 2022 Board of Education meeting minutes and the July 6th, 2022, July 27th, August 24th, September 28th, and October 26th of 22 Special Board of Education meeting minutes. They have a motion.
I would like to, before we do, I would like to remove item 4B7 and 4.
I think that's on our next item though, right? Oh, I see, because we're doing the meeting agenda. You're right. Okay, so item, which one?
4B7 and 4B13. So one's the equipment taken out of service, the other one is the online tutoring. And I'll move for approval with those coming off consent.
Does anyone else have any other items to remove from consent?
This is Barbara. I don't have anything to remove from consent. However, with the approval of the minutes, if the spelling of my name could be fixed in a couple of places.
Thank you.
EN instead of ON, and I'll second with that.
All right, may I have a roll call, please?
Peggy Mola Aragon,
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. Okay, so our next item is, let's see, so we removed, let's go ahead. Let's do the first ones. We'll do consideration for approval of the December 12th, 2022 capital outlay property and technology matters. That's items 1 through 6. May I have a motion for approval for those?
This is Crystal, so move.
I'll second. This is Josefina.
May I have a roll call on that, please?
Peggy Mola Aragon,
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. So the next item that we'll hear, this is item B7, consideration for approval of statement of equipment to be taken out of service for August 1st through 31st of 2022. Discussion action.
Yeah, I just have.
Go ahead, Board Member Mueller.
So I know I got an answer to my question, and I had been told this is more about the Promethean boards that were taken out of service, and I think most of them were from Highland High School, but they've been taken out of other high schools, including some in my district. And so I was told that they were being replaced, but then I found out that they weren't being replaced unless they have the funds to purchase new ones. And they are costly. So my question is probably to Scott or maybe to Ms. Apodaca, is if the schools don't have the funds to purchase new ones, and from what I've been told, teachers like having their smart boards. And so if the school doesn't have the money and they're told they don't have the money, what other recourse do they have?
So Board Member Mueller Aragon, it's funny you should ask that question because we had a big discussion just this afternoon about that very topic. So there are a number of funds that the technology department can access to purchase this equipment, including the bond issue where we did put quite a bit of money in. But one of the things I think you may remember that we talked about last year was that when we were forced into the 1-to-1, we discovered that between the amount of devices that we would need and the amount of help desk support we would need, we were underfunding technology to stay at a 1-to-1. So we're going to have to look at future bond issues and maybe having to shift some money that way so that we can handle that. In the interim, the technology department does have a request for ESSER funding, which is a perfectly appropriate use. And so we are looking at that as a way to shore up this immediate need. And we have told the schools as of today to hold off on trying to purchase on their own. Now, we do know there was about 39 schools that last year secured money from legislative requests. So those will go ahead as planned. And I know that Shell Marie Harris is here from Informational Technology. And Shell, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to my 10,000-foot overview or not.
Yes, good evening, Madam President and members of the board. We at Educational Technology are evaluating all the classrooms currently to see which classrooms have old boards and which classrooms have new boards. We do know that 39 schools are receiving some of the panels, but they're not outfitting their entire schools. So we were going to go back through, look to see an exact number of panels that are needed for all classrooms, and then have a closer number so that we can put it through budget steering.
Okay, can you just, can you give us an idea, like update us on that and, you know, the cost for purchase and where we see that going and how quickly it'll happen? I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, actually, I can give you a little bit of an update. So there is some money out of the CRISA funds that we have that has to be expended by the end of the year. And we're looking at how we can transfer that to make that quickly spent and so we can get it done in time. So that's about $20 million right there. I think the overall request, if I remember right, is close to $40 million because we're talking a full replacement because those boards are getting old. And if you remember, when those boards get old, the screens start to fade and they're almost invisible. So it's very, very difficult. So this is a unique opportunity with the federal funds, especially to make a major investment in some of the infrastructure. Now, these new active views are a lot better than that. They don't fade like the old ones do.
Okay.
So it'll be a significant upgrade.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we'll go on to item 14. Consideration for approval of cash disbursements for November 2022. And this is a discussion action and Board Member Mueller.
It was 13.
Was it 13? Oh, I'm sorry. I marked the wrong one. So let's go to 13. Consideration for approval of district purchase or expenditures that equals or exceeds $250,000 online tutoring services.
Right. And so I know I got some of the answers to my questions, but I was talking to some teachers, as a matter of fact, today, and there was a little bit of a concern because from the answer to my question is that the online tutoring will occur during the school day. That's correct. And so the teachers are going to be teaching during that time when the kids are getting tutoring. So it very much to me looks like what they told me is what it was similar to what hybrid learning was, which was asking a whole lot from our teachers, is trying to, and I understand that the teachers are going to be teaching their children and the online person is going to be working with those students. Are the students not going to be in the classroom when the tutoring is going on? If so, I'm just asking for them because they were just worried that this was going to be that they were going to be asked questions and they're trying to teach their class while these children are getting online tutoring?
Board Member Buell Aragon, I'm hoping some of our instructional people are here to answer this question, but I will tell you, yes, it will occur in the classroom. It's no different really than a reading station. And if you walk in these days, you'll see the
Yeah.
kids oftentimes with their headphones on.
Right.
So what you could do is you could have a group of students who are struggling with arithmetic or subtraction, whatever the skill is, and you could set up an online tutoring for them. And actually the online teacher then will take the responsibility. So it's not hybrid. It's actually an improved method. And we're really kind of excited about it because I think it'll provide support for our teachers and a tool that they'll be able to turn to and have an actual person to work with them instead of just software or them having to set it up themselves. Now, they still have to group the students appropriately. They have to make sure that and it's small enough that the online tutor can help. And it's no different than having a station. They're still going to have to monitor behaviors, right? But it will not be hybrid instruction in that regard. And I think where it was difficult for our staff was the planning and process when you had both groups.
Mhm.
This way, they'll be able to really focus still on the internal, the students they're working with while keeping an eye on the kids at the station. But I don't know who's here to help with this answer.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we do have Joyce Gormley or Dr. Chanel Segura here to answer for
We
questions.
also have Amanda here from Paper that she can also speak to.
So go ahead. Oh, there you are, Dr. Segura. Do you want to go in first?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board and Superintendent Elder. Thank you. And as far as our approach to this tutoring, we've looked into what high dosage tutoring can do for our students. And in the research that's taken place, it's demonstrated that gaps are getting closed much more quickly than not. And that they've found that actually the high dosage tutoring that takes place in the classroom is more effective than outside of the classroom. Just like Superintendent Elder stated, this is a tool to help teachers when they are breaking up into small groups. A teacher needs to give more focused attention to a group of students. He or she can sit with that group of students. If you have students who are more accelerated, they can continue on and have a study group together. If there's a higher order question that they're struggling with, they can get on with a tutor at that time. And that tutor uses an inquiry-based method to be able to support the learning and the critical thinking of the students during that time. So again, it's not taking away from the instructional time. We encourage direct instruction, but we also encourage guided practice and independent practice. And when students are engaging in that guided practice or independent practice, they then have the opportunity to get some more focused attention if they need that one-on-one attention to break down a specific problem or concept. And so this, what we have learned is that this has provided teachers with the opportunity to be able to group students in a way where they can be more effective in the classroom after they've done the direct instruction. And I know we have Amanda Holzclaw with Paper, the Senior Partner Director. And so I don't know if she has anything else to contribute.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yes, thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Elder. I just want to thank you all for your dedication and service to your community. I'm delighted to answer that question. It's one of my favorites, quite frankly, is really how we work and partner with our teachers and our classrooms and the dedication that Paper has to leveraging and augmenting your initiatives. We work alongside with an entire enablement team that's dedicated on how to help work with your teachers in whatever capacity they need that would best bring the Paper education to help reinforce what they're teaching in the classroom. So one example that you heard was small group instruction. I'll give you an example of mathematics. So I have an 8th grader, and every day she's supposed to come in with her math and whatever questions and corrections that she has to her math problems. In this environment, what we're seeing in our best use case scenarios are where the teachers may have rotating groups. So one group might be working on, say, math manipulatives. Another group is working on their homework and working with a tutor to answer some of the questions they might have had. And the reinforcement we get from teachers that once they start utilizing the application with their students, they feel like they have just another qualified teaching assistant right there with them, which they say actually frees them up to really work and rotate and work with that individualized instruction moreover. Additionally, what we also provide is writing reviews. And so what many of my teachers are using this with their students are for intentional note-taking. And so the students will do their intentional note-taking and they will submit it up to a paper tutor to review, a content specialist, and they can review and say, hey, you might have missed an area of these notes or some incomplete thoughts, and really kind of work with all of that. We have an entire enablement team that will work alongside the curriculum folks to make sure that this is something that the teachers feel fully supported. And one of my superintendents from a different district, he called it the plate complaint. He doesn't want to put more on the plate, too much on the plate, right? So this is something really intended to help the students, but also be a really great resource for the teachers as well. Thank you for the opportunity to answer any questions.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just my concern. I don't want to put more on teachers' plates. And so you assured me somewhat that that's not going to be the case. And you also said that direct instruction is not going to be affected. So that's another important thing to teachers as well. So this is a question that wasn't exactly answered. I asked what kind of, and you, Amanda, would maybe be able to speak to this, is what kind of learning gains, what do their learning gains really look like in other districts that have been using this program?
That is a great question, and one that makes a lot of sense to ask. What kind of response or return on this investment can you find? One of the things that we just received from a third-party researcher is from the Learn platform. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but they actually just completed their ESSA level ESSA evidence of support, and we just received level 3 for evidential support that this tool is in fact making gains and helping students rise in their, whether you call it accelerated learning, what your choice is, and helping them recoup some of those gains that we would like for them to see. And then I have case studies of various school districts, Valverde in California, I believe. One student, he had a GPA of like 1.8, and over the course of a semester doing high dosage tutoring, he was able, it may have been throughout that finishing of the year, but he brought his GPA up to a 3.4. And so I've got a district in Mesquite, Texas, that they've been using the solution for just at 4 months. And they have had north of just about 375,000 minutes of time that their students have had with a tutor. Almost half of that was in essay writing and review, which saved teachers approximately 3,000 hours of initial review. It gave them the opportunity that when they did review the writing, that they were able to really put a lot more focus in on the content. And so what we're seeing is just the quality of the work that the students are able to put forth is improving as well.
If you could possibly just get some of that data to us, I would appreciate it. also, you mentioned in passing about acceleration. So those children that may not be behind, you also will provide like acceleration for those children so they can even get further ahead.
Absolutely. Great question. So when we're looking at individualized, personalized instruction, we certainly have students who are needing to close an achievement gap, but we also have students that are really wanting to live up to their potential. And as a result of COVID, so much attention has had to be put towards closing that achievement gap and accelerated learning. And with the paper education, we cover 250 different subjects, all the way through calculus and the AP subjects. And so your AP students, they can reach and have individualized, personalized instruction as well. And our system uses something called a smart matching, which basically means we're automatically integrated into your rostering. And so our system knows if we're dealing with a AP student that is needing to be matched with an AP tutor versus if we're dealing with a student, say in 4th grade, that's needing to have something that is age appropriate for that level. So we match with their rostering. So instantly their dashboard is going to be linking them to their classes, and the tutors will be matched accordingly to those classes and levels.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
I'm very glad that that is going to occur as well. So then this is a question I'm sure you for sure know the answer to, Amanda, is when it comes to, we know that many children struggled with online learning. Learning just didn't happen for many of them. So this is also going to be online. Yes, I know it's somewhat different than having one teacher with a whole, group of children. It's a smaller group. But those children that struggle with online learning, is your data showing that your program, your tutoring is working for those students as well? Because those are the kids I obviously were very concerned about.
Absolutely. So some of the things that are very different from the online environment, besides just the shock of it taking place, taking students, many students who also struggle with attention challenges, to sit for a whole day in a virtual environment, that was a bit much. Our data shows that the average session of a live session is around 23 minutes is the average session time. And so that's a very different experience than having a complete online a virtual environment. When we work with districts that are focusing with a classroom integration where it is in teacher-driven instruction, but we're there to support that instruction, it becomes like any other resource, it becomes part of the integrated framework of that curriculum. And so being able to come in for whether it's 5 minutes or whether it's 20 minutes or whether it's 2 hours, that puts the student in complete control of whatever their need is for that. So if a student just has a quick question and they want to get in and just validate that they were on the right track, they can have a 5-minute experience and then they can move on. If you have a student who really needs a lot more coaching and guided instruction to support them, then they're going to have that tutor who will not terminate the session until the student does. And the tutor will always be reinforcing what has been taught in the classroom, what's going on, sharing the notes. What is your teacher notes? What does your notes say for this type of problem? So it really does reinforce what the teacher's doing live in the classroom. Doesn't take away face-to-face. That is always preferred, but it certainly gives that reinforcement.
Yeah, I mean, I was a kindergarten teacher, so having kindergartners online, those were the early childhood years were the ones that really truly struggled, not as much at the middle or for sure at the high school level, but those younger kids just suffered so tremendously. And I was talking today to a 4th grade teacher, and if you can assure me, and then I can assure her, her students are, the majority of them, like probably over 70% of them are at least 3 years behind.
3 years behind.
At least.
Absolutely. Yeah. So and we've been looking at those trends and how do we help those I kind of look at them as students, they're kind of at that frustration brick wall, right? They're so far behind, they don't exactly know where to even start. And so some of it is just taking away the anxiety related to the experience. So one of the things that we've incorporated is trying to put some gamification into the platform as well. So there's something that you'll be getting that's we're calling paper math, and we have paper missions, and it is a gamified visualization of math. And what we started doing is creating these challenges for students that they just get in daily and they do one of these math missions, and it's really fun, and it's age appropriate for them, and we have it for all levels of grades as well. But we are seeing that is one thing that's getting them into the platform, taking away some of those reluctance and putting some fun back into it. We've also added live streaming of some paper live programs to help with some of those younger ages. And then we've also just been launching voice notes for voice to text and reading as well for those younger grades who maybe aren't where they need to be from, like I said, their sight words, and we're from that standpoint. And then adding voice notes, which is also great for your bilingual students as well. And you didn't speak about that, but any of the bilingual program to be able to speak and be connected with a native speaker of that language and to hear it as well. So if they are needing that audio support, that's going to be available for them as well.
Good. Thank you, Amanda. And this is probably going to go to Dr. Segura or to Scott. So those students that have been identified, I think you had said there was 6,000 or 7,000 that are over 2 years behind, and you know who they are. Are those the students that we're really going to focus on, like truly focus on, Scott or Dr. Segura? And then the other question I have, when we look at how this is working, how much time are we giving it to see if it really is working for our children?
So we have a 20-month contract with Paper to be able to see for the spring semester. We're going to have a campaign kickoff where we're going to inform staff, train staff, as well as students and families on what this initiative entails and how it can be used to support student learning. And then there's a dashboard that we will be monitoring as far as usage at specific grade levels. We have identified groups of students, and teachers and schools are also able to drill down to those students who are that far behind. This isn't going to be the only thing that's going to help those children. It's going to be that more focused, but absolutely, this is going to help support some of those in-depth critical gaps that we're looking at with some of those kiddos, and just looking over in this 20-month period to see what do our gains look like when we're looking at our interim assessments and then our summative assessments, attendance, all the things that this I feel can very positively impact by giving students an opportunity to ask those questions. If they're struggling or embarrassed to ask them in class, they can ask a tutor and get that one-to-one breakdown individually. So I think that this will be really positive. And then one more thing I want to say about it is the writing component. In the listening sessions and listening to some of the groups, we heard that our kids need to learn how to communicate and write better. And as a former English teacher, I think to myself, if I was able to tell my students to have their essay or their lab report or whatever, it could be cross-curricular, their extended writing pieces reviewed and given some feedback before they submit them to me, that would have been really helpful. And the reason I feel many teachers don't give extended writing pieces is because it takes so long to grade, that this can really help with that time to be able to enhance and encourage and push our kids to write more extended pieces and be able to turn that around with some more feedback besides just the teachers, which could take sometimes up to a month to get feedback, which is a little too late.
Okay, so we'll have about 20 months, and so we can pivot if we think it isn't working for our students and we don't see the gains that we want. I hope, and I don't know, Dr. Segura or Scott, in your heads that you have an idea of what kind of gains you want that would make it worthwhile. I want to do anything that's going to help our children catch up, help them get ahead, anything that's going to work. As a kindergarten teacher, I'm not exactly fond of online anything, but if it's going to help, I'm willing to, put my support behind it. I just want to make sure that you all know what you think is going to be good gains for our kids, and that if it's not happening, that we can look at something else that might.
I think when we bring the goals next month and we start talking about interim progress, that'll be certainly a component of that conversation, especially with the Yazzie Martinez subgroups.
Right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion?
This is Barbara. I have a question. I think I was clear about what this looked like at the beginning of the presentation than I am now. Because when you first started talking, it sounded like a teacher could design a small group for intervention that would meet, and would it be on a regular basis during, the small group differentiated learning time, so that a group would consistently be with the same tutor every day at that time? Does paper have the capacity to have that kind of consistency? And what's the structure for communication between the teacher and the tutor?
Great question. Is that the question for me to answer? Okay, wonderful.
Probably.
Okay, so what I heard you say was that as the presentation went on, it prompted more questions for you in terms of how this would be implemented, particularly if it's being used as an intervention approach from that standpoint. And I will say that one of the things that you will have with paper is we will be hiring locally what we call a customer success manager. And this person typically usually has prior educator experience as well. But this is your person that will be dedicated to meeting on a regular basis, looking at all of your data, not just paper data, but all of your data, and looking at your needs. Some districts do incorporate paper as part of their MTSS program or structure. So some of our districts will utilize paper as a tier 1 or a tier 2 level support if they choose. And we absolutely can support that business decision if that's one of the ways that you want to incorporate it. It's really hard, I'm sure, for you to understand all of the different applications, because we're there to support you in whatever kind of framework that you want to use. So if one teacher really likes those small group instructions and those rotations of groups, doesn't necessarily have to be for a remediation or for an intervention. It could just be the way he or she likes to conduct a classroom. Then it certainly can support that environment. If it's going to be used as an MTSS, we can certainly structure it around MTSS. We have AVID support. So if you've got AVID programs, we can support from an AVID perspective. So there is not a one size fits all. In terms of capacity of tutors, we have capacity to serve 5 million students. We currently have 3 million students on our platform. And we are 24/7, 365, round the clock tutors that also have supervisors that are on each of those shifts. And so it will be led by the teacher as to whether or not some of our teachers will, as part of that intervention, say, you need to 3 days a week have a 20-minute session with tutor, and here's what we want you to work on with your tutor, if that is the choice from an MTSS. In terms of the same tutor, we actually, for promotion of safety and liability, we take student safety as a #1 paramount priority for us. Some of the things, the changes we made is kind of talking about early COVID. We removed video from that. Students don't like to be on video anyway, so we had that chat based. But we also make sure that the likelihood of them having, we have thousands of tutors, so the likelihood of them having the same tutor in an online environment is very unlikely because of the rotation. And so that is the one thing I do want to be very transparent about. They won't have the same tutor in that environment, but that same tutor will have full access to the transcripts and the history, as will the teacher. The teacher will always be able to see every keystroke that has taken place in interactions with those tutors. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is somewhat concerning to me, just because it seems like the children who struggle the most also need the most stable relationship with the person who's doing the tutoring. And
Absolutely.
so that does seem problematic. That
Yeah, Brown University, that is in their high dosage tutoring of the 10 different areas for high dosage tutoring. That is one that personal relationship. And so I don't disagree. A face-to-face is ideal in the environment of scalability. And when we are really looking to, in high dosage tutoring, really accommodating close to 50 hours in a semester to help those students that are really trying to regain those grounds, then that is an area. The consistency being the platform, the format, we all follow the Socratic method of education and teaching. And as Dr. Sakura said, this is not the only solution that they're looking at helping those students that are those 2 years or so behind.
So I think one of the things that somewhat was why I ended up more confused at the end than at the beginning is that, so I have in my mind that it's basically teacher directed, in the sense that if you put a group together as a teacher, if you're putting together a group of students for targeted instruction on a particular learning point, then that's really teacher directed in the sense of the content of the intervention. But then it sounded like, as you went on, that it could be more student directed. As students working on something, they need some support while the teacher is busy with another group. And it sounded like some of the support could be much more student directed for what that student needed help with at the moment. Am I misreading this?
Some districts will implement this as an after-school program that the students are basically looking to use on their own. And that is, that's not the kind of relationship that we have talked over the past 6 months and really looking at the needs of the district. We really felt like bringing it in the classroom, partnering with the teachers and helping them have this teacher-driven environment and approach to it was what was going to be the most impactful for the students. So it's really how we're looking to support your business decisions and bringing this in that classroom environment. Dr. Sakura, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yes, and so I do also, and correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda, but if a student, has a tutor that really explains things really that's helpful for them, the sessions are recorded and the student can save that session so that they can refer back to it over time. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So they're always able to go back to their history and they can look for that. They could ask if that tutor was on shift at that particular time. And it's just a smart matching algorithm may not initially pair them with that, but they could always ask if that person is on shift.
Okay, thank you. Board member, any other questions?
Oh, I was just going to say it. So it is far less than ideal, but I think we're learning that we just don't have the capacity to have all of the people in a building that we need to have in a building. So this definitely sounds like a better alternative than another software program. So I do appreciate that, but I'll be interested in seeing what the outcomes are.
Absolutely. Yes, face-to-face is always preferred, but the scalability and still having live, so this is not artificial intelligence, still having a live person working is where we would like to be able to help. Thank you for your questions and comments.
Thank you. Board Member Jackson.
Thank you. So I have 3 questions, and thank you, Amanda, for answering all of these questions. It really does sound like it's a great program. My questions are for the district representatives. So I don't know if that's Dr. Segura and maybe Superintendent Elder. So my first question is, and I'm just going to ask all 3 because they might all go together. The first question is, well, the first statement is that I see that we have a scope of service, but I don't see a contract in here. And I think maybe my questions can be answered had I seen a contract. But so the first is, what guardrails do we have in place as far as the contract is concerned to ensure that the student outcomes, the needs are being addressed? The second question, kind of related, does the vendor have any sort of initiatives or goals that they need to meet during the course of this next 2 years to make sure that our student outcomes are being addressed? And then the third question is, what guardrails is the district going to use, or do you guys already have in place, or have you been thinking about, to make sure that this tutoring is maximized to the greatest extent? And what made me think of that question, Dr. Segura, is when you mentioned that it would have been really nice to be able to have your kids maybe have a second party review the document before they turned it in. But besides having a kickoff, how are we going to ensure that this $2 million program is being maximized to the greatest extent possible?
Thank you, Board Secretary Jackson and members of the board. So with the, and Amanda, you can help me if I'm misspeaking here, the assigned, I think it's a district support specialist, I'm not sure of the exact title, will be working with us with that kickoff, but also with a training plan to make sure that we provide our teachers with the training that they need to be able to implement it however they choose to within the classroom, focusing on those high impact strategies such as having the students work in small groups with a tutor or individually, or having their writing assessed and given feedback. As far as, we really are trying to support our teachers, to not give them more to do, but to help support what they do in the classroom every day by bringing it all together and making it meaningful. And so as we roll this out, we are looking at what does that look like? We are still reviewing the agreement. So when you ask for the agreement, we're reviewing it still because there were some things that we're still working out with paper, with our legal counsel and their legal counsel. And so we're working through all of that. But ultimately, we're hoping that with what paper is saying that they can do to implement strongly within our district, that we as the teaching and learning department can see that through and support teachers and students, working closely with this specialist to pull data regularly so that we can see which schools are using it the most, teachers, and really highlighting some of these best practices, because sometimes teachers come up with the best practices and something that works for them. So we want to be able to highlight that. But overall, just another layer of support so that teachers aren't just trying to do the heavy lift by themselves.
And Dr. Secor, if I could add just one comment for Board Secretary Jackson. We believe very much in our platform and our tutors and our support, so much that the guardrail that you asked about and mentioned, we call that a performance-based agreement. And so in our agreement that we're reviewing, we are offering a performance-based clause where we agree upon joint metrics and joint responsibilities. If we do not hit a certain level of activities, student engagement and activities that we agree upon, there is a monetary rebate back to the district for that. That is how strongly we feel committed to making sure this partnership is more than just a one-time contract signature and a one-time training. The training for the teachers is virtually unlimited and configurable, and that dedicated person will be a point of contact for facilitating your teachers with our enablement specialist and really personalizing for each. There is not a one size fits all. And so working with your teachers personally, any building tech coaches, anything like that, that we would want to work and create targeted approaches. So just the longevity of our relationship is committed by that performance agreement that we're offering.
Did you have something you wanted to say?
I did, but I kind of gave it up. So.
Okay. Well, and thank you, Amanda, for giving it up, because that's what I was looking for, was something that you weren't going to drop, in January, and then we wouldn't see you again for 2 years. I would also strongly ask the administration to set some very specific outcome goals. I'm going to assume, or at least hope, that this data will be included as we move to a dashboard, that this data is going to be included maybe on a quarterly basis. And but that's what I was looking for, and that's what I was hoping for, that you said there's a performance-based clause. And so that sold. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I would just follow up on that, remind the board that we have just entered into a contract to begin training on outcomes-based contracting.
Mm-hmm.
And so this next semester, we'll be working with an agency on outcomes-based contracting, just like this. And we have an opportunity to write an RFP all by ourselves next semester with guidance to begin that process. We have a team of 5 that will be participating in that training over the next few months.
All right, thank you. I just think it sounds like an opportunity for our teachers to sort of structure their classroom, because it may not be those kids that have the highest needs that are actually on this. The teacher might have time to be with those highest need kids and be structuring the tutoring with some other kids that really could work through that. So I like the idea that we found a way to think about the online platforms and how we could use that, and we could maximize that as part of the day. So it sounds like it's a really good process, is hopefully that we get, and I agree with Board Member Jackson, is just hoping that we get participation, right? So the district, I'm hoping that you're thinking about what's ideal implementation in terms of the number of classrooms, number of teachers, or making sure that we're also looking that is it being utilized across the zones, and that, that there's utilization for $2 million. I'm hoping also that we're going to get some really good participation in that and see what the outcomes are going to be on that. So what I'll do now is I'll call for, I guess what we need to do is let's first go on consideration for approval of statement of equipment to be taken out of service. On that item first, we'll take a vote on that. Do I have a motion?
So moved. This is Barbara.
I'll second. This is Josefina.
Can I have a roll call on item 7, please?
Peggy Muller-Aragon.
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Yes.
Barbara Peterson.
Yes.
Tapia Romero.
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes, we'll go on now to item 13, consideration for approval of district's purchase or expenditure that equals or exceeds $250,000 online tutoring services. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. This is Danielle.
Second, this is Courtney.
Have a roll call, please.
Peggy Mota Aragon,
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. And our final here is approval. Can't turn my page over. Consideration for approval of consent items on item B.
I move for approval. This is Peggy.
Second, this is Courtney.
May I have roll call, please?
Just to be clear, those were motions for the special consent calendar items 1 through 6, 8 through 12, and 14.
We took a vote on the first ones, 1 through 6, so we're only voting on item B.
So 8
It's-
through 12 and 14.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Peggy Mota Aragon,
Yes.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes, look at that. It's 10 till 6. How exciting. All right. So announcement of upcoming board meetings. The next Board of Education meeting will be held on Wednesday, January 4th, 2022 at 5 p.m. in the John Milne Community Boardroom of the Alice and Bruce King Educational Complex, 6400 Uptown Boulevard Northeast, or virtually at www.aps.edu. And the next special Board of Education meeting will be held on Wednesday, January 11th, 2022 at 5 p.m. also here in John Milne Community Boardroom. And with that, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, guys.